By sunrise, the Alpha King would know he had thrown his true Luna into the snow, but in that moment, with the entire royal court watching, Alexander Blackwell only saw the lie placed carefully at her feet. "Kneel, Omega," he commanded, his voice low enough to make the marble hall fall silent. Emily Carter stood alone beneath the black banners of Blackwell Keep, her pale fingers curled around the torn edge of her gray dress, her breath unsteady but her spine still straight. She was smaller than every alpha in the room, a rejected, unwanted Omega with no family powerful enough to speak for her, no rank high enough to protect her, and no wolf loud enough to challenge a king. That was what they saw. A weak girl, a convenient mistake, a body easy to blame. Marcus Reed, the king's trusted beta, stepped forward with a sealed silver box in his hands, his expression carved into perfect grief. "Your Majesty," the royal seal was found among her belongings. The east gate was opened under her name. She betrayed the crown. A ripple moved through the court like cold wine through dead leaves. Emily's stomach tightened, but she did not lower her eyes. She looked past Marcus, past the polished armor and velvet gowns, straight to the man on the obsidian throne. Alexander Blackwell was terrifyingly still. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black, with dark hair shadowing a face made for command and punishment, he watched her as if she were a puzzle he had already decided was not worth solving. Yet behind his golden stare, something flickered. Not doubt, not mercy, something wilder, something trapped. Vanessa Hale stood at the king's right, beautiful in white silk, her blonde hair shining beneath the torchlight like a halo she had stolen. "Poor thing," she said softly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some Omegas are so desperate to matter that they reach for crowns they were never born to touch." A few nobles laughed under their breath. Emily felt the sound brush over her skin colder than the storm waiting outside. She wanted to scream that they were lying. She wanted to tell Alexander that she had spent the night in the healing wing, that she had never touched the royal seal, that the only gate she had opened was for an injured stable boy carrying medicine through the service hall. But she understood the room too well. Truth had no weight when spoken by an Omega. Not here. Not before people who had already decided her silence meant guilt and her fear meant weakness. "I did not betray you," she said, and though her voice trembled, it did not break. Alexander rose from the throne. The court stopped breathing. His power filled the hall with the scent of pine, winter air, and distant thunder. "Emily Carter," he said, each word final, each word a blade without blood, by royal command. "You are stripped of protection within this kingdom. Before dawn, you will leave Blackwell territory and never return." For the first time, pain crossed Emily's face, quick and bright before she buried it. Somewhere deep in Alexander's chest, his wolf slammed against the walls of his control, snarling one word so violently it almost bent him at the knees. "Mate." Alexander ignored it. He had ignored softer instincts for years. Kings did not survive by trusting whispers. Emily looked at him one last time, and the hurt in her blue-gray eyes was not pleading. It was a warning wrapped in heartbreak. "One day, Your Majesty," she said quietly, "you will understand what your mistake cost." No one answered. The guards opened the great doors, and winter rushed into the throne room like it had been waiting for her. Emily walked into the snow without a cloak, without a blessing, without a single soul following her. Behind her, the doors closed with a sound like fate being sealed. And on the throne, beneath the crown and the lies and the watching court, the Alpha King heard his wolf howl in agony. "You just threw away our mate." The cold did not simply follow Emily Carter into Blackpine Forest. It hunted her. Each step carried her farther from the golden windows of Blackwell Keep and deeper into a wilderness where the trees stood like silent judges, their black branches bent under the weight of snow. The storm erased her footprints almost as soon as she made them, as if even the earth had been ordered to forget she existed. Her dress was too thin for the night. Her shoes were not made for frozen ground, and the air scraped her lungs with every breath. Still, she kept moving. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant hearing Alexander Blackwell's voice again, calm and merciless, sentencing her before a court that had never once cared whether an Omega told the truth. Emily pressed one hand against her chest where the ache of the severed protection still pulsed. Not a formal mate bond, not one the court had blessed, but something older had cracked inside her when he looked at her, as if she were nothing. She had known loneliness before. She had known hunger, humiliation, and locked doors. But this was different. This was being cast out by the one wolf her soul had reached for before her mind understood why. A sharp sound cut through the wind. Emily froze. At first she thought it was a branch breaking beneath the snow, but then it came again, low and uneven, followed by the faint scrape of claws against bark. Her inner wolf, quiet from shock since the throne room, lifted its head. Emily turned toward the sound. Common sense told her to keep walking. Black Pine Forest was not a place for a lone omega after midnight. Hunters left traps beneath the drifts. Rogue beasts crossed the northern ridge. Warhounds that had lost their masters were said to wander between the pines, half spirit and half nightmare. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and beneath it was something Emily recognized too well. Abandonment. She pushed through a curtain of ice-coated branches and found the dying oak at the edge of a narrow ravine. Beneath its twisted roots lay a massive midnight black wolf, larger than any wolf she had ever seen. Silver chains pinned part of its body to the frozen ground, and a faint dark stain marked the snow beneath its side. Its fur was matted with frost, its breath shallow, its golden eyes burning through the storm with a terrible, almost human awareness. Power rolled from it in broken waves. Pine. Ozone. Royal command. Emily should have run. Instead, she took one step closer. The wolf's lips curled, not in attack, but in warning. A voice slammed into her mind, rough with pain and authority. Run. Emily swallowed, her throat tight. I have nowhere left to run. The wolf stared at her, and for one strange second the forest seemed to hold its breath. Emily knelt in the snow, keeping her movements slow, her hands open where he could see them. The silver chain hissed faintly against the ice, and when she reached toward it, heat flashed across her palm. She flinched but did not pull back. I know, she whispered, though she did not know whether she spoke to the wolf or to herself. It hurts to be trapped by something everyone else thinks you deserve. The golden eyes locked on hers. The growl faded. Emily wrapped both hands around the chain and pulled with everything she had left. The metal burned cold, the storm roared, and the wolf's breathing faltered beneath the dying oak. Stay with me, she pleaded, leaning closer as her healing gift sparked weakly beneath her skin. Please, do not make me be the only one thrown away tonight. She pressed her trembling palm against the place where his life felt thinnest, pouring warmth into him one fragile thread at a time. The wolf went utterly still. The forest silenced. Then his golden eyes closed, and beneath Emily's hand, the great black wolf stopped breathing. Emily did not understand the silence at first. The storm still moved around her, sweeping snow through the twisted roots of the dying oak, but the wolf beneath her palm had gone terrifyingly quiet. No shallow breath. No tremor under the frost-dark fur. No pulse of power pushing back against her gift. For one breathless second, she saw herself reflected in him, another unwanted creature left outside the walls to disappear before morning. No, she whispered, and the word broke out of her like a promise she had no strength to keep. She pulled at the silver chain again, ignoring the white heat that flashed through her hands. The metal gave an ugly groan, half buried beneath ice and roots, but it did not break. Emily set her jaw. The court had called her weak. Vanessa had called her desperate. Alexander had looked at her as if she were a stain on his kingdom. Fine. Let them be wrong. Let them be so wrong that the whole world would feel it. Emily braced one foot against the frozen root and pulled until the chain finally slipped loose from the packed snow. The wolf's massive body shifted just enough for her to see the deeper mark beneath his shoulder, where the silver had pressed too long against skin and fur. She had no royal medicine, no warm room, no healer tools, only a torn dress, shaking hands, and the small gold light inside her that every pack healer had dismissed as useless because it was gentle instead of grand. She pressed both palms to the wolf's side. I am sorry, she breathed. This may hurt. The first spark of healing flickered beneath her fingers, faint as a match in a blizzard. It spread slowly, a trembling thread of warmth moving into the wolf's frozen body. Emily felt the poison in him like winter trapped under the skin, cold and bitter, fighting everything alive. She gathered it the way her mother had once taught her to gather fever from a child, not by force, but by invitation. Come to me. Leave him. Take my warmth instead, the cold answered. It climbed through her fingertips, up her wrists, into her arms, and settled behind her ribs. Emily gasped, but she did not stop. The wolf's chest rose once. Barely. Then again. His golden eyes opened, unfocused and wild, and a low sound vibrated through him. Not quite a growl, not quite a warning. That is right, Emily said, her voice thin but steady. Be angry. Stay alive and be angry. The wolf stared at her as if her face had become the only fixed point in the storm. His power brushed against her mind. Weaker now, searching, stunned. Why? Emily almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat. Because someone should live through tonight. She leaned closer, resting her forehead against the cold bridge of his muzzle, and pushed the last of her healing into him. Light spilled between them, pale gold against black fur, melting the frost in a small circle around her knees. For a moment, the wolf looked less like a beast and more like a king under a curse, ancient, wounded, and impossible to abandon. Emily felt his breathing strengthen. She felt the chain's curse loosen. She felt her own body growing distant, as if the snow were lifting her away from the ground. Live, she whispered. Even if I do not. The world tilted. The golden light vanished from her hands. As Emily fell sideways into the snow, the wolf surged forward, catching the edge of her sleeve gently between his teeth before her head could strike the root. His eyes were clear now. Horrified. Human. Bones shifted beneath midnight fur, not violently, but like a shadow changing shape under moonlight. A man's hand reached for her through the storm, warm against her cheek, and the last thing Emily saw before darkness claimed her was the face of Alpha King Alexander Blackwell staring down at her, as if his crown had just turned to ash. Alexander Blackwell had faced wars, rebellions, border fires, and councils full of smiling traitors, but nothing had ever emptied the air from his lungs like the sight of Emily Carter unconscious in the snow. For several seconds he could not move. He simply knelt beneath the dying oak with frost in his hair and the echo of her last words still shaking through him. Life. She had said it as if his life mattered more than hers. She had said it not knowing the wolf she saved was the king who had cast her out. Alexander looked at his hands, at the silver chain lying useless in the snow, at the faint golden warmth still fading from his skin. The poison was gone. Not weakened. Not slowed. Gone. A poison drawn from the royal vault, made to stop even an Alpha King's healing, had been pulled from his body by a rejected Omega with no cloak, no protection, and no reason to show him mercy. His wolf paced inside him, furious and broken, slamming one thought against his mind again and again. Mate. This time Alexander could not ignore it. Emily's scent rose through the storm, soft beneath the cold, vanilla, snow, and something bright like rain over pine. Beneath it was the bitter trace of fear, exhaustion, and a bond wounded before it had ever been allowed to bloom. He remembered her standing in the throne room, small but unbent, saying she had not betrayed him. He remembered Vanessa's delicate voice, Marcus's solemn evidence, the court's hungry silence. He remembered his own command. Leave Blackwell territory and never return. Alexander's jaw tightened until it hurt. What have I done? He whispered. Emily did not answer. Her lashes rested pale against her cheeks, and her breathing was so faint he had to lean close to feel it. Her hands were marked from the silver, her fingers curled, as if even unconscious she was still trying to hold on to the chain. Alexander stripped off his black cloak and wrapped it around her with careful, shaking hands. Kings did not shake. He did. In the distance, a low horn sounded from the keep, carried faintly through the storm. His guards were searching for him now. So were the people who wanted him gone. Alexander looked toward the dark line of Blackwell Keep and understood with sudden, cold clarity that his enemy had never needed to defeat him in battle. They had only needed him arrogant enough to condemn the one person fate had placed within reach. He lifted Emily into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and that realization cut deeper than any accusation. Stay with me, he ordered, but the command cracked at the edges. His wolf pushed forward, not to dominate, but to protect, wrapping its warmth around the fragile pulse against his chest. When the royal guards found him at the forest road, they stopped as if the snow itself had frozen them in place. Their king stood barefoot in the storm, carrying the exiled Omega he had sentenced only hours before. "Your Majesty," Captain Rowan breathed, eyes widening. "Is she the attacker?" Alexander's golden gaze snapped to him, and every guard lowered his head at once. "She is under my protection," he said, each word quiet, lethal, and absolute. "No one touches her. No one questions her. No one speaks her name in judgment again without answering to me." The ride back to Blackwell Keep passed in a blur of white fields and dark pines. Emily never woke. Alexander kept one hand over her wrapped fingers, feeling the faint pulse there like a thread holding him to the world. By the time they entered the inner courtyard, dawn had turned the snow silver. Servants stopped. Soldiers stared. Above the steps, Vanessa Hale appeared in a white robe, her perfect face paling when she saw Emily alive in the king's arms. Marcus stood beside her, and for the first time since Alexander had known him, the beta's expression slipped. Fear flashed there. Small. Quick. Enough. Alexander saw it. His grip tightened around Emily, not enough to hurt, only enough to promise the storm itself that he would not release her again. Vanessa forced a soft gasp. "Your Majesty, why is that traitor here?" Alexander walked past her without slowing. "Prepare the royal infirmary," he said, "and lock down the vault." Marcus stiffened. Vanessa's smile vanished. Alexander looked back once, his golden eyes colder than the morning snow. "The real traitor is still inside my court." Emily woke to the scent of cedar smoke, clean linen, and fear disguised as perfume. For one disoriented second, she thought the snow had taken her, and this quiet warmth was some gentle place beyond pain. Then she opened her eyes and saw the carved black ceiling of the royal infirmary, the silver lamps burning along the walls, and two armed guards standing outside the half-open door. Blackwell Keep. Her heart lurched. She pushed herself upright too fast, and the room tilted. A soft blanket slid from her shoulders. Her hands were carefully wrapped, her torn dress replaced with a plain white healing gown, and beside her bed sat a cup of water she did not remember receiving. None of it comforted her. Cages could be warm. Trials could begin in clean rooms. She swung her feet to the floor just as the door opened. Vanessa Hale entered first, graceful as falling snow, her pale robe untouched by the chaos of dawn. Behind her came Marcus Reed with 3 council witnesses and a royal clerk holding a black leather record book. Vanessa looked at Emily the way one might look at a stain that had somehow returned after being scrubbed away. "Awake already," she said softly. "How fortunate. The court has questions." Emily's throat felt raw. "Where is the king?" Marcus answered before Vanessa could. "Resting because of whatever you did to him." The words settled heavily between them. Emily gripped the edge of the mattress. "I helped him." Marcus gave a humorless smile. "That is an interesting word for touching the sacred wolf form of the Alpha King after being lawfully exiled from his territory." One of the council witnesses murmured a prayer under his breath. Another looked at Emily as if her breathing offended royal tradition. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice delicate, almost kind. "No Omega survives exile, finds the wounded king, lays hands on him, and returns wrapped in his cloak unless something unnatural has happened. You understand why people are afraid." Emily stared at her. The words were silk over poison. "People are not afraid," Emily said quietly. "You are." Vanessa's smile thinned. For a heartbeat, the room sharpened. Even the lamps seemed to dim. Marcus raised one hand toward the guards. "The Omega will be moved to the lower holding rooms until the king is strong enough to give final judgment." The guards stepped inside. Emily stood, unsteady but upright. Her knees trembled. She hated that they trembled. She hated that Alexander was nowhere in sight. He had carried her back. He had said she was under his protection. Yet now, when hands reached for her again, the room held only accusations and polished silence. Maybe protection was another word kings used until politics became inconvenient. "Do not touch me," Emily said, but her voice was too soft to stop them. A guard reached for her arm. Before his fingers closed, the air in the infirmary changed. It filled with pine, winter lightning, and a power so ancient every candle bent low. A low growl rolled from the hallway. Not loud, not wild, but absolute. The guards froze. Marcus turned. Vanessa went still. From the shadow beyond the door, a massive midnight black wolf stepped into the room. His golden eyes burned brighter than the lamps. Every witness backed away at once. Emily forgot how to breathe. She knew those eyes. She knew the weight of that stare in the snow, the warning in her mind, the life she had begged not to leave. The wolf did not look at Marcus. It did not look at Vanessa. It crossed the infirmary with silent, deliberate steps and placed itself between Emily and the court. Marcus swallowed. "Your Majesty, this is not wise." The wolf's lips lifted just enough to end the sentence. No one moved. Then, slowly, impossibly, the Alpha King's wolf lowered his great head and pressed his muzzle into Emily's bandaged palm. The room went silent in a way silence had never been before. Emily stood trembling in the center of it, her hand resting against the fur of the most feared wolf in the kingdom, while the creature everyone obeyed chose her without a single word. Vanessa's face lost all color. Marcus looked toward the doorway as if the walls themselves had betrayed him. And somewhere beyond the infirmary windows, one wolf began to howl, then another, until the entire keep seemed to answer the rejected Omega's name. The howls had barely faded from the walls of Blackwell Keep before the court found a new way to call Emily dangerous. By noon, she stood in the throne room again, wrapped in a simple gray cloak from the infirmary, her bandaged hands hidden in its folds, while nobles whispered as if she were a storm that had learned to walk. Alexander Blackwell sat on the obsidian throne, no longer in wolf form, but not fully steady either. His face was calm, his black coat immaculate, his crown resting above eyes that kept returning to Emily with something heavier than regret. The court saw a king watching a prisoner. Emily felt a wolf guarding a wound. Marcus Reed stood below the steps with the royal physicians behind him, his mouth set in a line of obedient concern. "Your Majesty," he said, "your judgment may be clouded by the foreign magic she used on you. For the safety of the crown, the Omega must be contained until we understand what she has done." Vanessa Hale pressed a white handkerchief to her lips. "No one is accusing her without reason," she murmured. "We all saw your wolf kneel to her. That is not natural." The word moved through the room like a spark near dry leaves. "Not natural." Emily lifted her chin, but inside, something ached. Once again, her kindness had become evidence against her. Alexander's fingers tightened on the arm of the throne. "Enough." The command cracked across the marble, and every whisper died. "Emily Carter will not be caged." Marcus bowed, but his eyes did not lower quickly enough. "Of course, Your Majesty." Then he reached into his coat and touched the small black token hanging from his chain of office, the royal vault key Alexander had ordered sealed that morning. Emily saw it. So did Alexander. For one suspended second, the room went utterly still. The scent came next. Bitter silver hidden beneath cedar oil. Alexander rose too fast. A shadow crossed his face, and the gold in his eyes flickered. His hand gripped the throne as if the stone beneath him had tilted. The physicians rushed forward, but Marcus lifted both hands and practiced alarm. "The poison is returning," he said. Her magic failed. Emily knew that lie before it finished leaving his mouth. The cold she had pulled from Alexander in the forest had not returned by accident. Someone had called it back. Alexander dropped to one knee on the throne steps, breath uneven, power shuddering through the room in waves that made the torches bow. Vanessa stepped between Emily and the stairs. "Do not let her near him." Emily looked at the king who had condemned her, the man whose mistake had left her alone in the snow, the wolf who had placed his head in her wounded palm. She could walk away. No one would call it cruelty. No one fair. But Emily had never survived by becoming what hurt her. She moved. 2 guards reached to stop her, and the midnight wolf inside Alexander growled through his human throat, low enough to freeze every hand in the room. Emily knelt beside him on the marble. "You were wrong about me," she whispered, close enough that only he could hear. "But I will not become wrong because of you." She placed both bandaged hands over his heart. Pain flashed through her palms as the silver answered. But beneath it was Alexander's warmth, stubborn and fading, and beyond that, a bond pulling toward her like sunrise through storm clouds. Emily closed her eyes. The small golden gift everyone had mocked did not flicker this time. It rose. Light poured from her hands in a bright, steady wave, washing over the black marble, catching in the silver banners, turning every shocked face pale with wonder. The cold poison loosened. Alexander drew a deep breath. Then heat bloomed beneath Emily's collarbone. She gasped as a crescent mark, white gold and radiant, appeared against her skin like moonlight made visible. The royal physicians fell silent. The council stared. Vanessa took one step back. Marcus went gray. Alexander opened his eyes, and the full gold of his wolf looked out through them, not commanding her away, not doubting her, not mistaking her for anything less than what fate had known from the beginning. His hand covered hers, careful over the bandages. In front of the entire court, his voice broke into a whisper rough with awe and shame. My Luna. For 3 heartbeats after Alexander whispered those 2 forbidden words, no one in Blackwell Keep moved. My Luna. The phrase hung beneath the vaulted ceiling like a bell that had been struck by fate itself. Emily felt every eye in the throne room turn toward the crescent mark glowing beneath her collarbone, and for once, the whispers were not sharp with mockery. They were afraid. They were confused. They were beginning, against their own pride, to understand. Alexander remained on one knee on the marble steps, his hand still covering Emily's bandaged fingers with careful reverence, as if she were not the Omega he had exiled, but the only reason his heart continued to beat. Slowly, he rose, and the court lowered with him. Not because he commanded it, because his wolf did. Power rolled from him in a silent wave, and even the oldest council members bowed their heads. Marcus Reed was the last to move. Alexander saw it. Emily saw it too. The small delay, the stiffness at his jaw, the way his hand drifted toward the black token on his chain before stopping halfway. Alexander's voice was quiet when he spoke, which made it far more dangerous. Give me the royal vault key. Marcus blinked once. Your Majesty, the vault was sealed by your order. Then you should have no fear giving me the key. The room tightened. Vanessa Hale stood near the right side of the throne, her face pale beneath its careful beauty, her fingers twisting the edge of her white sleeve. Alexander, she said softly, abandoning his title in a way meant to sound intimate. Surely this can wait. You have just survived a magical collapse. The Omega has overwhelmed everyone with whatever power she carries. We should proceed gently. Emily looked at her then, really looked. She saw the fear under the perfume, the panic under the silk, the woman who had smiled while sending another woman into the snow. You are not worried about him, Emily said. Her voice was hoarse, but the hall carried it. You are worried he will finally ask the right questions. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Marcus stepped forward. This is exactly what I warned about. She speaks above her rank, twists suspicion toward loyal servants, and now uses a mark none of us have verified to influence the throne. Alexander descended the remaining steps until he stood between Marcus and Emily. You will not use her rank as a shield for your lies again. Marcus's mask cracked. Only for a second, but enough. Alexander held out his hand. The key. No one breathed. At last, Marcus removed the black token from his chain and placed it in the king's palm. Alexander did not look away from him. Captain Rowan, he said, take 3 witnesses to the vault. Bring the poison ledger, the silver inventory, and every seal record from last night. Marcus went still. Vanessa's lips parted. Emily felt the truth approaching like thunder over the mountains. While the captain left, Alexander turned to her, and the throne room seemed to fall away from them. For the first time since she had known him, the Alpha King looked less like a crown and more like a man who had finally seen the ruin beneath his own command. Emily, he said, his voice lower now rougher. I condemned you when I should have listened. I let pride speak louder than my wolf. I let the court weigh your life as if your birth made you disposable. I was wrong. The words landed hard, but not the way Emily had once imagined. Some part of her had wanted an apology so badly that she had dreamed it would feel like warmth. It did not. It felt like touching an old wound and discovering it still remembered every cold night. Alexander bowed his head before her. Before everyone. I am sorry. Gasps moved through the room. A king did not bow to an Omega. A king did not confess shame before council, soldiers, servants, and wolves. Emily looked at him, at the man who had carried her back, at the wolf who had chosen her. At the king who had broken something he could not simply command whole again. Her eyes burned, but her voice stayed steady. Too late. Alexander flinched as if the words had found the deepest place in him. Emily did not say them cruelly. That was why they hurt more. A woman should not have to save a king to be believed by him, she said. An Omega should not have to nearly disappear in the snow before her truth becomes valuable. You are sorry now because fate proved I mattered. But I mattered before the mark. I mattered before your wolf knew me. I mattered when I stood here and told you I was innocent. Silence spread through the court, heavy and absolute. Alexander lowered his gaze. Not in anger. In acceptance. You are right, he said. Then prove it, Emily whispered. Before he could answer, the great doors opened, and Captain Rowan returned with a leather ledger clutched in his hand, his face grim. Behind him, 3 witnesses looked shaken to their bones. Rowan bowed sharply. Your Majesty, the poison was removed from the vault under Beta Marcus Reed's seal. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Vanessa stepped back too quickly. Marcus stared at the ledger as if paper could betray him. Then Rowan lifted a second document. And the Eastgate order was not signed by Emily Carter. His eyes moved to Vanessa. It was signed under Lady Hale's private mark. Vanessa's soft mask shattered. Her voice rose, bright with panic. If she lives, everything we built is over. Emily's crescent mark warmed. Outside the walls, the royal wolves began to howl again, not in warning this time, but in judgment. The first assassin did not enter with a roar. He entered with silence, and that was what made the throne room turn cold. One moment the royal wolves were howling beyond the walls, and the next, every torch along the marble columns bent away from the eastern doors as if the flame itself sensed a forbidden command. Marcus Reed moved first, not toward Alexander, not toward the guards, but toward the side archway where a hidden gate release sat behind an old tapestry of the first Leakin king. Captain Rowan saw him and shouted, but the sound arrived too late to stop the iron locks from opening somewhere deep inside Blackwell Keep. A distant alarm bell began to ring. Vanessa Hale's fear vanished, replaced by something sharp and desperate. She lifted a slender silver dagger from the fold of her white sleeve, its surface darkened by an old curse that made Emily's Luna mark burn beneath her skin. Alexander stepped in front of Emily instantly, one arm raised, his golden eyes blazing with the full fury of his wolf. But the poison Marcus had called back still clung to his strength like ice under the ribs. He faltered for half a second. Only half. Long enough for the court to see the truth. The Alpha King could not save everyone at once. Emily looked at his back, at the crown above his dark hair, at the shoulders that had carried too much pride and too much guilt. Then she stepped around him. Alexander's voice cracked through the room. Emily, no. But she was already moving. Not running. Not trembling. Moving like the storm had finally remembered her name. Vanessa's dagger lifted, the cursed silver drinking the torchlight, and several nobles cried out as guards surged forward. Emily did not wait to be rescued. She raised her bandaged hands, and the crescent mark at her collarbone opened into light. It was not a weapon. It was warmer than that, older than that. The glow spread from her skin across the marble floor in a circle of white gold, washing over boots, gowns, armor, and fear. The dagger in Vanessa's hand stopped inches from the edge of that light. The curse curled away from it like smoke in morning sun. Vanessa gasped and stumbled back, staring as the silver lost its darkness and became only metal, harmless and exposed. You should have stayed invisible, Vanessa whispered, but her voice no longer sounded like silk. It sounded small. I tried, Emily said. You would not stop stepping on me. A crash echoed from the eastern hall. Assassins poured through the opened gate, masked in black and moving fast, but before they crossed the threshold, the windows shook. One by one, shadows rose beyond the glass. Wolves. Dozens of them. Black, gray, silver, white, their eyes burning gold in the storm-lit afternoon. The doors burst inward under the force of royal command, and 50 wolves stepped into the throne room without touching a single innocent person. They did not snarl wildly. They did not need to. They formed a living wall behind Emily Carter, the rejected Omega, the accused traitor, the girl thrown into the snow before dawn. Marcus froze with his hand still near the gate release. His face emptied of all confidence. The assassins stopped as if the floor had disappeared beneath them. Emily felt the wolves at her back like a heartbeat larger than her own. She understood then that she had not called them to fight. She had called them to witness. Her light rolled across the room again, touching the cursed dagger, the forged gate orders, the poison ledger in Captain Rowan's hands. Every lie answered. The ink on Vanessa's false signature turned black. The vault record and Marcus's name burned bright silver at the edges without catching flame. The dagger revealed the same mark etched beneath its handle. Hail! Read. Betrayal dressed as loyalty. The court saw it all. Alexander moved beside Emily, but he did not step in front of her this time. He stood at her shoulder, equal, guarding without hiding her. The crown has seen enough, he said, his voice low and terrible. Marcus sank to his knees. Vanessa shook her head, backing away until the wolf's golden eyes stopped her. Emily's light softened. The room, so hungry to condemn her hours ago, now lowered itself in stunned silence. One council lord knelt, then another, then the physicians, the clerks, the guards, and the nobles who had laughed beneath their breath. Even Captain Rowan bowed his head. Finally, Alexander turned to Emily and lowered himself to one knee before the entire court. But before he could speak, every wolf in the throne room bent its head to her first. The rejected Omega had not taken the throne. The throne had recognized her. The throne room did not cheer when the wolves bowed. It fell into something deeper than silence, the kind that comes when a kingdom realizes it has been wrong in public. Emily Carter stood at the center of the marble floor with snow still melting from the hem of her gray cloak, her bandaged hands glowing faintly. At her sides, and 50 royal wolves lowering their heads behind her, as if they had always known what the court had refused to see. Vanessa Hale had been taken away under guard without a crown, without a smile, without anyone left willing to believe her softness. Marcus Reed knelt with his wrists bound by royal law, his polished loyalty stripped down to the fear beneath it. Yet Emily barely looked at them. Revenge did not feel the way she had imagined it might. It did not warm the place where betrayal had entered. It did not erase the night, the snow, or the sound of the doors closing behind her. Alexander remained on one knee before her, the Alpha King of every northern pack bowing lower than any ruler in Blackwell history had ever bowed to an Omega. His crown caught the torchlight, but his eyes stayed on Emily's face, not the mark at her collarbone, not the wolves behind her, not the court waiting to see what he would claim. Emily Carter, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Before this court, before the royal packs, and before the moon that judged me better than I judged you, I name you innocent. I name you true. I name you the Luna fate chose before I had the wisdom to recognize her. A tremor moved through the gathered nobles. Some bowed lower. Others looked ashamed. Alexander reached up, removed the black crown from his head, and held it between them. But I will not claim you like a prize after I broke you like a sentence. Emily's breath caught. For the first time all day, the power in the room did not feel like it was pressing against her. It felt like it was waiting for her. Alexander placed the crown on the marble at her feet. The sound was soft, but it struck the court harder than any command. An apology is not enough, he said. Not from me. Not after I let your rank speak louder than your truth. Not after I taught this court that an Omega's word could be weighed less than a liar's evidence. So I will prove it. Starting now. He turned his head toward the council, still kneeling along the lower steps. The exile laws are suspended. No Omega in Blackwell territory will be sentenced without witness, defense, and equal hearing before the crown. No rank will silence a voice in this hall again. The oldest council lord lowered his forehead to the marble. As the Luna commands, he whispered, though Emily had not yet commanded anything. The words moved through her slowly. Luna, not as a trap, not as a label forced onto her, because fate had become convenient. As recognition, as responsibility, as choice. Emily looked down at Alexander, at the man who had failed her, saved her, believed too late, and now waited without reaching for what the bond offered. The midnight wolf stepped from the line behind her and pressed its great head beneath her bandaged hand. Alexander closed his eyes as if the touch steadied him from the inside. Emily felt the bond between them, bruised but alive, not demanding forgiveness, only asking whether a beginning could be built where the ending should have been. I cannot forget what you did, she said. The entire court seemed to stop breathing. Alexander opened his eyes. I know, and I will not forgive you because your wolf chose me, or because the court bowed. I know. Emily's fingers moved gently over the wolf's dark fur. If I stand beside you, it will not be because you claimed me. Her voice strengthened. It will be because I choose to stand where no girl like me will ever have to beg to be believed again. Alexander bowed his head. Then I will spend every day becoming worthy of that choice. Emily looked at the crown on the floor, then at the wolves, then at the court that had once laughed softly